Now, clearly one less legal woe for Assange, but is it good news?
Well, it's excellent news, but it was entirely expected because, of course, these Swedish allegations were very obviously always a CIA fit-up, and they were only ever intended to get Assange into custody in order to pave the way for an extradition to the United States for publishing the truth about American war crimes. And now these allegations had served their purpose, and plainly there was never a scintilla of credible evidence behind them. They're not needed anymore, so it's entirely expected that they are dropped now.
And how much do you think this is going to affect extradition to the US that Assange is currently facing?
Well, I think the idea that anybody can be extradited to the United States of America for publishing documents leaked to them, documents which were also published by the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Guardian, and thousands of other media outlets around the world. You know, this is a fundamental attack on media freedom. I'm afraid to say that governments in the West nowadays seem to have lost all clue when it comes to the fundamental meanings of liberty and democracy. So it's not impossible that the extradition will succeed and will go ahead, but we will be fighting very, very hard to make sure that it does not.
We here at RT have reported extensively on Assange's poor imprisonment conditions. He continues to be held in Belmarsh prison. What do you make of the conditions he's being held in? Are they fair?
Oh, it's absolutely horrifying. I mean, there is no reason whatsoever why a publisher who is in prison for nothing whatsoever except for having published things the government did not want him to publish should be kept in solitary confinement. That is simply appalling. And plainly, I was devastated when I saw him at his last court appearance at Westminster Magistrates' Court. He was stumbling, he was incoherent, he couldn't easily remember his own name and date of birth, and this is an extremely intelligent and articulate man. These conditions amount to torture. Whatever is being done to him otherwise, physically or by medication, I don't know. But plainly, he's being kept in conditions which are extremely injurious to his health and absolutely unnecessary for a prisoner who has no track record of violence and doesn't need to be treated like a terrorist.
Well, and at the same time, Assange's legal team has claimed that their client is struggling to prepare his defense against that extradition because the computer he's been given is of rather poor condition. Do you think that there's any chance of those being upgraded, his computer being upgraded, having better resources to prepare his defense?
I think his defence has been quite deliberately crippled at all stages. The idea of giving him a virtually unworkable computer, all his papers and documents were stolen by the United States of America, were given to the United States by the Ecuadorian embassy perfectly illegally. The United States has no record, has no right to hold his documents. He has no access to his own materials to prepare his defence. And of course, the court refused to allow time for evidence to emerge from his Spanish court case that shows that his defence lawyers were spied upon in the Ecuadorian embassy against all rules of legal privilege by a security firm acting on behalf of the CIA. So everything possible is being done. He's not having a fair court proceeding or a fair defence at all. This ought to be a scandal of the highest kind.
There's, of course, a lot of controversy around Assange, but if we look specifically at these sexual assault allegations, back in 2010, when the allegations first arose, Assange was questioned in Sweden, but then the case was closed and he was allowed to leave the country, only for it to then be reopened again shortly after he left. What do you make of Sweden's overall handling of the whole case?
It's absolutely ludicrous. And then he was eventually questioned. They could have questioned him at any time in the Ecuadorian embassy. They waited 6 years to do so. Then when they eventually questioned him, it became plain their case would not stand up, that there was no evidence which could form the basis of a conviction. They then closed the case again in 2017. Then they opened it again in 2019, reopened it for a second time. It was never, ever more than a preliminary investigation to go for a European arrest warrant on the basis of a preliminary investigation not endorsed by any court was unprecedented. The case has obviously been a political fit-up from the start. And I should say that I thought today that the prosecutor, Ms. Pearson in Sweden, was an absolute disgrace. She said that the accusers had given credible evidence. Well, if the accusers had given credible evidence, why close the case? Unless it's also the case that the defense gave credible evidence. And if the defense gave credible evidence also, why didn't you say that? I think an attempt, even while dropping the case because you have insufficient evidence, to do so in a way designed to blacken the name of somebody while at the same time denying them a chance to prove themselves innocent in court, was absolutely disgusting and reprehensible by Ms. Pearson. And I think the Swedish people should be ashamed of her, should be ashamed of the entire way they have been played by the CIA with these bogus cases in order to get Julian Assange into custody. Everybody in Sweden should be deeply, deeply ashamed today.